talk about fair use and how can fair use help save a filmmaker, let's just throw out a number, 6 figures, 100,000 or more in expenses on their film? And what is fair use?
Go ahead.
Well, let's start off with the question, what is fair use first, which I think can succinctly be answered with the explanation that it's really a person's right to use a limited amount of copyrighted material without permission from the copyright holder. And that word limited, I think, is really key, and it also needs to be used for the purpose of comment or criticism. So documentary films lend themselves to fair use, I think, in every instance. You know, if you're doing a historical documentary about anything, you're going to want to show clips or stills or something that represents what you're talking about. So that's really what fair use is in a very quick nutshell. And then in terms of saving clients money, you know, that's not the purpose of fair use, but it's certainly a nice benefit. But in terms of when you're using fair use, you don't have to license from the copyright holder. So that in and of itself means you're going to be saving some money. People often come to us and they say, oh, we can't afford you, but we have a $100,000 budget for licensing clips. And it's like, well, let's rethink that a little bit. It's like, well, you know, you come to us, our fee is not nearly that much, and you can use things under your right to use materials under fair use.
Although we can give you, before you leave, an article from the New York Times that talked about a film where we saved 400,000. So it is an unintended consequence. The purpose of the Copyright Act, which many people don't realize, is to encourage new works. So the creation of new works is why we have copyright law. And if it helps the creation of new works to use a little bits of other people's stuff, that is in furtherance of the copyright law, not in opposition to the copyright law.
So does, let's say, 5 minutes of a clip constitute copyright infringement versus 1 minute, oh, that's under the fair use time limit? Or am I,
it has
nothing to do with that?
Nothing, because the key is, when a documentary is, are you using it legitimately to illustrate some point you're already making? And do you use what's reasonably appropriate? And sometimes that's a short bit, and then it's whatever it takes to, but no more than what it takes to illustrate what you're trying to illustrate. And then is the connection clear? Mm. So it isn't a matter of seconds. You take a photograph, it's going to be 100%. You take a film, it is going to be a small percentage, but you can't put just a percentage or a fixed number and say that's it.
Right. Filmmakers so often have a notion that 30 seconds or less is fine, or with a song, 6 seconds or less is fine, and they come up with these rules, which are totally inaccurate. However, courts do look at how much they use. That is certainly one of the factors that courts look at, is how much of the underlying work do they use. And that, I think, goes part and parcel with another factor that's extremely important with fair use, is how will it affect the market? So if you're going to displace that market, someone's going to watch your movie instead of the movie which you took a clip from, that's going to weigh heavily that it's not fair use. If it's not affecting that market, and in so many cases with documentaries, it's actually helping the market. You do a film on the history of Asian American movies or something, and you show all these clips from Asian American movies, more people are going to want to go and see those movies. So that weighs in favor of the fair use argument. But there's not a hard and fast rule, which again is one of these notions that people think there are.
Let's take another position. Let's say I'm a filmmaker who's had my content taken and put in someone's film, and this other filmmaker is claiming, well, it's fair use.
Yeah.
Who is this a jury that determines how appropriate that clip was? Let's suppose it was something that I felt, hey, that was my work, and it's more than appropriate, or whatever the terminology you had used earlier, that to determine or to make a point about something.
Right.
What would I do in that case? Let's suppose my work's been taken, well, theoretically.
The first thing you do is really understand what is and isn't fair use. The book talks about 3 different ways of answering that question: the statutory way, the safe harbor way, which I just outlined to you, and then there's a best practices booklet that also is relevant. These are different ways, and you want to really be sure that no matter how you come at the question, you land up with the answer, hey, this is not fair use. Then you go get a good litigator, or you might just call first and see if you can work it out with a filmmaker, because so many filmmakers are willing to pay a reasonable license. And you can tell pretty quickly if they consulted with a lawyer, if they really had good guidance, or if they used it hoping you wouldn't know, and when you call they say, oh, it's fair use. So you know, it's a...
I mean, a good example of that is, you know, music is I think an easy way to look at that. Music, if someone's using music as score for a creative purpose, regardless of how short it is, even if it's 3 seconds, we'll always opine that's not fair use, because you're simply using it for the creative value of it and because you like that song. If you're using music because you're commenting on it and you're talking about a certain song by Elvis Presley that he sang, and you show a little bit of that, that's fair use. But once you start using that song as score underneath the next talking head who's in your documentary, that's no longer fair use because you're using it just for the creative purpose. So you as a copyright holder who's had your stuff infringed upon or used under fair use would want to look at that. Are they using it for the creative value of it, or are they using it because they're really commenting on my work?